Before we get into this episode, I've got a massive shout out to do because a head teacher from a school in Brentwood called Mr. Watson has told me that there is a massive fan of the Football for Kids podcast. And that massive fan is Alfie Morgan, who has listened to many of the episodes and always enjoys them when they come out, which is fantastic news to me. So Alfie, a massive shout out to you, to all your friends and family and everybody that you know, and thank you very much for being a listener of the Football for Kids podcast. Podcast with me, Darren Rees. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a man who has achieved a lot of great things and a man who went from playing for Hereford United to making the men's England first team in the space of 8 years. Oh, and he became a bit of a West Ham legend in the process too. Of course, in this episode, we're going to be speaking about the truly fantastic and inspirational Jarrod Bowen. Before we get into this episode properly, a massive thank you to everyone who has taken the time to hit the follow or the subscribe button and left a review. In this episode, I'm going to be running a little bit of a competition where you can win a signed skills ball. All you've got to do is this. Wherever you listen to the podcast, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, or wherever it is, you need to follow or subscribe to the podcast. If you're already doing that, then no worries at all. That's the first bit done. You then need to give the podcast a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And if you can put a review in, then that is even better. And then finally, you need to ask an adult to send in your answer to this very question. In this episode on Jarrod Bowen, how many times do I say Bowen from this moment on? Once you've counted how many times I've said Bowen, there's one of them, ask an adult to send your answer, your name and age to footballforkidspodcast@gmail.com. And then, on an episode in the next week or two, I will announce the winner, and you will get a skills ball signed by me. So, as you listen along, why not try and count how many times I say Bowen? Blimey, that's 2 already. Well, let's get into this episode, shall we? About the amazing, about the fantastic, about the terrific Jarrod Bowen. There's 3. Jarrod Bowen was born on the 20th of December in 1996. Jarrod Bowen grew up in Herefordshire, where he would spend time around farming life, as that is what his dad did for a living. He was a farmer. Jarrod was a Manchester United fan when he was younger, and he used to really like David Beckham as a player. Bowen was inspired by Beckham and the way that he played football. Jarrod Bowen played football from a very young age. In fact, he was somewhere around 4 or 5 years old when he started with his local club, Leominster Miners. He was exceptional for them and stayed with the club for a long time. At some point, when he got a bit older, he went for a trial at Aston Villa, but was unsuccessful. He then had a trial at Cardiff City, but he was unsuccessful there too. Jarrod ended up playing for a club called Hereford United Football Club. They were a small club, but a club that packed a punch. They played and fluctuated between the lower leagues of football, but had a 5,000-seater stadium which would often be full up and would create a lot of noise. Unfortunately, that club doesn't exist anymore, but it's a place where Bowen, as a youngster, proved how good he was. Jarrod Bowen became a free player when the club collapsed. Hereford were expelled from the Conference League and Bowen needed a new club to go to. Football is a big world in lots of ways, but it's also a small world because everyone in the business of football seems to know everybody in the business of football. And when there's a really good player, there's lots of people who know about them really quickly. Because, well, that's just the way it is. Jarrod made quite a leap when becoming a free agent from Hereford, as he was snapped up by Hull City, who at the time were in the Premier League. So Bowen literally went from non-league football to playing in one of the most competitive leagues on the planet, to potentially playing against some of the best players in the world. This was a time when Wayne Rooney was playing for Manchester United, Theo Walcott was on fire at Arsenal, and Didier Drogba was scoring in almost every game for Chelsea. Bowen had really joined the Premier League at a seriously tough time. However, it took 2 seasons before Bowen would make an appearance for the first time in any major match for the club. And in his 4 seasons with Hull, they would bounce between the Championship and the Premier League. One season with the Tigers, he scored so many goals that he became the club's top scorer for that season. And he was still so very young. And you've got to remember, it wasn't that long ago when he achieved this that he was just a non-league player. It was in 2020 in the January that Jarrod Bowen was snapped up by West Ham United. The goals that he'd been scoring at Hull, his attitude on and off the pitch, and his ultimate professionalism was being noticed by some of the big clubs in the Premier League. 3 weeks after signing with the mighty Hammers, Jarrod Bowen made his first start in a famous West Ham claret and blue kit against Southampton. The game ended 3-1 to West Ham, and Bowen scored himself a cracker. He seemed to warm to the club and its fans pretty quickly, and they certainly liked what he was about too. In Bowen's first full proper season, he became a regular face for the mighty Hammers, playing in almost every single game in every competition which they played in. He scored plenty of goals and became a bit of a fan favourite. Training session after training session, match after match, week after week, Bowen put the work in. He was dedicated to his job, to the club and to the fans that were there. He was putting smiles on faces, and he wanted to be a part of a team who could go on to win something for the first time in years. And in 2023, West Ham United won their first major trophy in 43 years, when they won the Europa Conference League against Fiorentina. Do you know who scored the winning goal in the 90th minute? Yep, you guessed it, it was Jarrod Bowen, a 90th minute winner for West Ham United. It was the goal that got them that trophy. Bowen is one of those players who finds what the team need when they seem to need it most. He digs deep in every moment and he almost always pulls it out the bag. He's also pretty incredible when it comes to playing on away soil. Lots of players struggle when they're playing at an away stadium. Not Jarrod Bowen though. Fairly recently, he scored in 5 consecutive away games. This was something which was a record that only Thierry Henry, the great Arsenal player, had achieved before in the Premier League. Bowen is a bit of a goal-scoring machine, especially when he's away from home. Jarrod Bowen is set to be with the club until June 2030, as this is what his new contract has signed him up for. You can tell how much he loves West Ham, how proud he is to wear that shirt, and how much he means to the fans too. Some players are just meant to be with some clubs, and I truly believe that Jarrod Bowen is meant to be a West Ham player. Apart from scoring great goals almost everywhere he goes, he has also represented his country of England, getting his first England senior cap in 2022. And he went on to be a part of the England team in Germany Euro 2024. Although he didn't get anywhere near enough game time, in my opinion, in that tournament, don't ever underestimate someone like him being there in the background. Being a part of the training sessions, whipping in crosses, giving advice and positivity on the bench. Bowen is a great player and a great person, and because of that, he would have undoubtedly been great to have around. So, from playing with his local club, to playing non-league football, to being denied at Cardiff and Aston Villa, Jarrod Bowen has won trophies for his Premier League club. He's broken records and he's represented his country in one of the most major tournaments on the planet. He is yet another example of achieving your dreams. No matter how hard something might be, no matter how far away it might seem, no matter how many times you get knocked back, get your head down, work your socks off, be disciplined, and remember, never ever give up. Because if you give up, there's one thing guaranteed: you won't achieve the things that you set out to. But if you keep going and you keep giving it 100% in everything you do, and you've got a good positive attitude, no matter what, the end result will be a positive one. I hope that you've enjoyed listening to this episode on the remarkable Jarrod Bowen. And remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly, or pitch side, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.